네, 그럼 지금부터 5-1 세션을
Ladies and
시작하도록
gentlemen, we will
하겠습니다.
begin session
5-1 세션은
5-1.
남북공동경제발전계획 수립 시 한반도 육상
So, it is the role and
역할과
construction of land transportation
구축
infrastructure on the Korean
발전
Peninsula in the
편안표가
establishment
진행됩니다.
of the South-North
이번
Joint
5-1
Economic
세션의
Development
저자는
Plan.
민경태
It will be moderated by
국립통일교육원
Professor Min
교수님께서
Kyung-tae from National
맡아주시겠습니다.
Institute for
그럼
Unification
교수님께
Education. Now, I would like to turn it over to
시작해
Professor
주시면
Min.
네, 여러분 안녕하세요.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will be the moderator. I am Min Kyung-tae from NIUE. We will begin session 5-1 of 2022 Korea Global Forum for Peace. The title is The Role and Construction of Land and Transportation Infrastructure on the Korean Peninsula in Establishing South-North Joint Economic Development Plan. It is indeed a very meaningful topic, an important topic. It is true that inter-Korean relations are facing a deadlock, and yet preparing inter-Korean infrastructure is all the more important. Especially recently, the Korean government, in its announcement of the national platform, it placed an emphasis on the development of infrastructure in different areas of our economy, because infrastructure serve as the foundation of our economy and industrial sectors. So I believe that the South-North Joint Economic Development Plan could be the topic of our discussion today to present a certain blueprint or roadmap. So I hope that we'll be able to present the solutions and the vision as to how to better develop this North-South Joint Economic Development Plan. We are joined by 7 distinguished guests today, so 3 presenters and 4 panelists. So I would like to briefly introduce to you our speakers. First of all, we are joined by Seo Jung-won, Research Fellow of the Korea Transport Institute. He did a PhD in Tsinghua University, and he is leading the transportation and logistics researches in Korea. And secondly, we are joined by Ko Kyung-taek, who is the Senior Research Fellow of the Chairman of the Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology. I'd like to introduce to you our third speaker from the Korea Express Corporation Research Institute, Chief of Transportation Division, Mr. Baek Seung-gol. And he is also serving as the head of the advisory board on the transportation and logistics in Korea. Now we are joined by 4 panelists. First of all, Kwak Hyun-jun, who is the managing director of the Korea Expressway Corporation. He is also the director of the Korean Civil Engineering Society. And the second panelist is Dr. Lee Baek-jin, Senior Research Fellow from Korea Research Institute for Human Settlements. He got his PhD in Japan. Third panelist is from Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology. So he is a research fellow and team manager, Mr. Chung Sang-jun. Last but not least, we are joined by Lee Sung-woo, who is the Chief of Regional Cooperation Committee, Korea Maritime Institute. He is also leading a local group on today's topic. So as introduced, we are joined by 3 speakers and 3 panelists. We have a very tight scheduled session today. So I would like to ask our presenters to keep your given 15 minutes, and the panelists, you have 5 minutes to share your remarks. I was also told that there is a session right away after hours, so I would like to really ask you to keep your time. And after our discussions, we will also open it to the floor for questions and comments. We will also gather questions from online and share it with all the participants here today. So, at the bottom description of YouTube link, you can also share your questions or comments through the comment section. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our first presenter. That is Dr. Jung-won from Korea Transport Institute. He's going to talk about the Inter-Korean Road Transport Cooperation.
네, 안녕하세요. 방금 소개받은
Hello. As introduced, my name is Jung-won. I'm a research fellow at the Korea Transport Institute. So, as you know, the inter-Korean relations thawed shortly in 2018, but now we have entered into a stalled state once again, and this icy state appears to be protracted. Now, back when inter-Korean relations was amicable, if we had pursued aggressively some projects or programs, perhaps we would have enjoyed a better inter-Korean cooperation today. So that is a bit regretful. Now, today, I would like to talk about something that is very basic for co-prosperity of the two Koreas, which is land transportation logistics. Now, the past governments in South Korea have continuously pursued and showed its commitment towards cooperating with North Korea, and that is the same for the Yoon administration. But the problem is, in order to cooperate with North Korea and to transport the necessary materials and infrastructure, we need good land transportation system. If we do not have a good logistics network, we would not be able to reap successful outcomes from projects. So as to show some tangible outcomes in terms of inter-Korean cooperation, we need to establish land transportation in an efficient manner. Now, the 장마당 or the market economy in North Korea largely depends on the land transportation for success. As you know, the social systems in North Korea are centered on Pyongyang. So in other regions, the systems have collapsed to a very serious extent. In the 1990s, during the arduous march, North Korea did not do anything for its people, and therefore the people starved to death. And therefore, in order to seek for their own survivals and fend for themselves, the North Korean people formed a market economy, and this could perhaps play a key role in inter-Korean cooperation. Now let's go over to my presentation slide. Now I'm going to talk about the current status of North Korea in terms of its land transportation and the issues and characteristics of the North Korean economy and the land transportation logistics system, important bases and transportation and logistics system between major economic zones, and ways for cooperation. So the Yoon administration was launched in May 2022, and its national task is to establish peace on the Korean Peninsula through normalization of inter-Korean relations and East Asia diplomacy. But because we do have denuclearization of North Korea as a premise, this is not going to be easy. And we have confrontation between the Western camp and the anti-Western camp being accelerated. And U.S.-China conflict is escalating due to the United States IPEF, or the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And against this backdrop, there is a possibility that a new Cold War regime would be formed. And therefore, in a short period of time, it will be very difficult for us to seek for ways to cooperate between the authorities of the two Koreas. And therefore, we need to seek cooperation concerning the civil society or public corporations, which should be free from political and military circumstances. As we saw in the media already, North Korea has suffered a prolonged economic recession, which is exacerbated due to COVID-19. North Korea's economic recession is largely due to different elements like political and social and so on, but North Korea's obsolete internal transportation and logistics systems also play a big part. You do know that one of the greatest reasons of the arduous march is that it was caused due to paralyzed logistics system, which wreaked havoc on the distribution of goods. This argument is gaining a lot of support these days. Therefore, for the normalization of North Korean economy and for South-North joint economic development, it is important that we improve the distorted social structure that puts Pyongyang above everything. The Yoon administration has made many related efforts to this end. Now, the contents of the proposal, the premise of the proposal is still, once again, denuclearization, which means that we might not be able to expect a positive response from the North. Nevertheless, the Joint Inter-Korean Economic Development Plan and also the President's Liberation speech outlined some specific projects that both Koreas can pursue, one of which includes modernization of ports and airports for international trade. So through these efforts that have been mentioned through various plans and initiatives, we would have to carry out projects to modernize its ports. Now, after Kim Jong-un took power, it designated 20 more special economic zones. So it has around 27 special economic zones today, but we have not seen successful outcomes from these zones except from Rason. And maybe Rason is not so successful too. There are many reasons for this, but the key reason is because there is a lack of internal logistics network. Now let's talk about North Korea's road. North Korea's land transportation is very poor. There's a lack of infrastructure, and the existing ones are obsolete, and safety issue is critical. There are some roads that are paved, which if you put them all together, they're about 3,000 kilometers, which is very short. And it's the same for railroads as well. Railroads are obsolete, and most of them are single track, which means that there are safety issues, and also there's a capacity shortage. And because of electricity supply issue, it is not easy to operate the railway. But compared to roads, in terms of logistics, the railway is much better option than just automobile roads. Now let's talk about the logistics systems in North Korea's market economy. The external goods distributed in the North Korean market are imported through Sinuju, Rason, and also coastal areas like Wonsan and Cheonjin. And today, consumer goods are mainly distributed throughout the country, mainly in Pyeongchang in the western region and Cheongjin in the eastern region. So consumer goods are mainly distributed through those two channels. Now let me share my analysis of some important or major bases in North Korea in terms of economy. Now you can basically split North Korea into 10 areas when looking at its logistics system, and if you connect them all together, you will see what you can see on this map here. North Korea's land transportation is largely centered on the Pyongyang area. So the land transportation area in the eastern part of the country or across the east and western part of the country is very poor. North Korean authorities have never made official statistics about its logistics system, so we don't have a correct picture of it. So while I was doing the research at my institute, I received help from experts overseas, those who have lived in North Korea, who know well about North Korea. And if you look at this by items, usually resources and materials are carried by railways, whereas imported consumer goods are largely transported by roads. But this is, of course, not an accurate information. I did not get this information from people who are experts of logistics, but we can definitely use this material as a reference. And now I did say that the western part of the country also serves as a channel for consumer goods. Now let's talk about the Pyeongseong area. From Pyeongseong to Pyongyang to Suncheon and Siniju, these four areas are connected by roads, and therefore road is more relatively used more, whereas in other areas the railway is used more. On the other hand, if you look at the route that starts from Cheongjin, because the road network is rather poor in the eastern part of the country, most of the logistics are being carried out by railway. Now, let's look at transportation means by major import channel. The departure point can largely be divided into two, Siniju and Rason. Now, Siniju does use the road to some extent, but you can see that in the Rason area, the majority is railway. North Korea usually exports seafood, minerals. They actually use marine transport for that, whereas in the processing industry, the road is used for exportation. And as for imports, the building materials, industrial goods, and groceries use both railway and road. Now, if I were to put together everything that I've just said, the western part of the country experience actually have obsolete road. Nevertheless, the use of a road is fairly significant compared to the eastern part of the country. Now, this is a table that analyzed the official timetable of a railway and road of the 10 major economic areas that I mentioned earlier. The connectivity of the railway is relatively good. There are some routes where there is a railway but no road. But as for travel time, the road travel time is rather more short. But from Pyongyang to Wonsan, it takes 10 hours by railway, whereas it only takes 2 hours and 35 minutes by highway. Now, if I were to put everything together, the use of railways is greater than that of roads in North Korea. But the survey focuses not on the public sector logistics, but private sector logistics. If we are to include the public sector, then the use of railways would be much greater than what it shows in this presentation materials. Now, is this really efficient? Is using railway more than roads truly efficient for North Korea? That's a question that we must address. And due to the time difference in the operation of road and railway, yes, it might be more efficient to use the road, but there is a limitation of using road transport because of low connectivity and limited transport capacity. So if we can secure low connectivity and transport capacity for the road transport, we will be able to make improvements so as to normalize North Korea's economy. Now, I'd like to share my thoughts on the ways for cooperation. Now, the market economy began from the people's livelihoods, and there's no turning back anymore. And therefore, going forward, it will be important to revitalize this market economy and normalize North Korea's economy. And in order to do so, transportation infrastructure network needs to be in place. Now, starting with Gyeongbu Highway, we created the Busan Port, Incheon Port, and KTX in the 70s, and therefore we achieved a remarkable economic growth. We can incorporate this experience into North Korea to help them normalize its economy. And going forward, when we actually do pursue joint economic development, we will be able to accelerate the process and also cut budgets that will be required for such joint development projects.
우리 앞서 계속 말씀드렸듯이 기본적인 협력 방향은
And the basic way
정상화를 위한
for cooperation would be, once again, I emphasize, the establishment of transportation logistics infrastructure for normalization of North Korea's economy. Because it is nearly impossible for the authority of the two countries to cooperate, it is important that public corporations and civil groups play an important role to make sure that continued exchange is facilitated.
보다 구체적으로 그동안 남북 교통 협력은 주로 철도, 도로
To date, railway and road were basically the areas of support or cooperation between the two Koreas. But in order to raise the success rate of our joint project, perhaps we need to pursue some sort of package program which includes transportation, industrial complexes, energy, environment, and everything.
광복절 금축사에서
During his speech on Liberation Day, President Yoon suggested that we carry out projects to modernize ports and airports for international trade in North Korea. And
완비돼야 이게 성공이 될 수 있는 거라고 생각을 합니다.
this would become successful only when we have the right land infrastructure in place.
본격적인 추진 이전이라도
So even before we embark on a joint economic development in earnest, we would have to start cooperation on land transportation first in order to see success in the following projects.
그 도로 부분에 대해서 간단히 말씀드리겠습니다.
Now let me talk about the road area. So as you know, road transport is directly linked to people's livelihood and market economy, and therefore we need to expand the role of roads and also expand its connectivity and modernize them. And North Korea's road-related law has been amended lately. And with that, we are able to raise the possibility of securing more finances for North Korea's road going forward. So perhaps going forward, we might be able to conduct cooperation with North Korea in terms of private road and toll roads. Now going into railway cooperation. While logistics between South and North Koreas are important, we would also have to consider logistics from the continental areas as well. So China, Russia, and other OSP platform-based cooperation would be important going forward. Now this is the last part of my presentation. I believe that with regards to green peace zone in the border area, we would be able to, through land transportation cooperation, create an inter-Korean economic cooperation zone in the border areas, or the second Kaesong Industrial Complex. I hope that the political landscape surrounding the two Koreas would become peaceful so that both Koreas can enjoy prosperity going forward. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. Seo Jong-won, for your presentation. You said that with the expand of marketization in North Korea, it is important to establish transportation logistics system that connects major regions in North Korea. And you said that North Korea, historically speaking, has pursued a railway-oriented transportation system, but you raise questions as to whether that is truly effective. And in order for North Korea to raise the effectiveness of its transportation, perhaps it needs to develop its road transportation more.
Next, I would like to invite Dr. Ko Kyung-taek from Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology, who's going to talk about the roles and construction effects of roads on the Korean Peninsula for joint development. As introduced, I am Ko Kyung-taek, Senior Research Fellow and Chairman of the KICEBT. Today, I would like to share with you past, present, and future perspectives regarding the transportation and logistics policies between the two Koreas. So in 1972, the officials of the chief negotiators of both South and North signed a joint agreement and they shook hands. And by seeing that photo, a lot of the Korean people were shocked. And it says in the joint statement that we're going to reconnect the divided Korea physically and logistically, and that meant actually reconnecting the railroad. So there were ups and downs, and in 2002 and 2003, there were agreements to connect the roads as well as railways. So in 2002, there was the agreement, and the actual service kicked off in 2003, and a lot happened until 2018. And during the Panmunjom summit in 2018, there was an agreement to modernize the relevant railways. And there was a groundbreaking ceremony to recover the southern corridor of Gyeongwon Line. And there were lots of expectations. But with the failure of the Hanoi summit, all of these efforts have been suspended. So during inter-Korean cooperation, actually the vehicle traffic, so the travel of vehicles between the two Koreas had played a very important role in promoting inter-Korean cooperation. But with the suspension of the Kaesong Industrial Complex and the Kumgangsan tourism, these traffics have been suspended. Now, there was a survey or research about the areas that require inter-Korean economic cooperation. And topping the list is the road and railway, that is the infrastructure. Up until now, a lot of agenda were covered in these areas. Now, in North Korea, there is the Party Congress that is held, and it's a very important event. And the 8th Party Congress was held in 2021, in January. And there was an announcement about the national development plans and also the continued pursuit of nuclear programs. In the construction sector, there is a plan to provide about 50,000 houses in Pyongyang city. And in the construction sector or construction materials sector, there is also a goal for self-sufficiency. And in the transportation sector, there is also a plan to revamp the transportation system. And this year, in February, there was the one-on-one training in the construction sector. Lots were said, and the focus was also on improving railways and roads, and also achieving or improving self-sufficiency in construction materials. And the essence of Chairman Kim's official letter, was that North Korea is going to pursue a very balanced development of its construction sector. It's going to focus on quality first and quantity later. So it's going to seek quality-based construction projects going forward. And as the focus of the national development, North Korea is seeking to ensure the stability and safety of its railway and railroad networks and modernize its networks and improve road safety as well. I'm sure that you are already aware of the road conditions in North Korea. It is not very good, and Chairman Kim also recognized that or acknowledged that. So there are toll roads and toll expressway between Pyongyang and Wonsan, which came into service in 2018. And the toll fees are paid electronically. So it was the first time that such system was introduced. And as for the average ordinary roads, with marketplaces rising in North Korea and a growing demand for marketplaces, we see that the roads are becoming longer and being extended. So we can see that with the development of markets, roads have also added importance, become more important. And as Dr. Seo said, railway situation is not that good. And according to the Inter-Korean survey or research, things are not very favorable. And the length is very short, ranging up to like 50 kilometers. And you can see that the situation is pretty much serious all across North Korea. We also analyzed the situation of North Korea based on some broadcasted information. And you can see that there are very few projects involving road construction or railway construction. A lot of the construction are very much focused on housing. So this is the road transportation scene or conditions seen by North Korean media. You can see that North Korea is very much affected or was very much affected by flood and typhoon in 2020, and the recovery is still ongoing until now. And if you look at the image on the right, it's an image of a railway. You can see that there is indeed a lack of sleeper rail ties. And as for the railway bridges, a lot of them have collapsed. So we can't really see the steel frames, and the concrete conditions are very bad. So when it comes to bridges in North Korea, they may urgently need replacement or maintenance. And Yangon Province's Haeshan and Samjiyon Railway kicked off in 2019. So there are several tunnels and bridges in service, and concrete sleeper was applied to this railway. So if you look at all of these recent railways that are being developed in Korea, they have become quite modernized, not to the level of South Korea, but to a certain extent, they have indeed become quite advanced or modernized. Now, if you look at the recent technological developments regarding road transportation in North Korea, most of these technological advances are focused on railroads. For example, improving the productivity of railway, improving the durability of sleepers. As for roads, the technological developments are quite limited. So this is to say that road constructions are quite rare in North Korea. which gives us less opportunity to cooperate with North Korea in the road sector. So these are the construction sites in North Korea. In 2012, there was a road construction in Siniju. That's the image on the left. So it really reminds you of South Korea in our 1950s and 60s. So you can see that there's no like machines or equipment. It's usually the labor, manpower that's used for construction. And as for the new Amnok River bridge, it was financed both by North Korea and China. So the North Korea part was constructed by North Korea. So that was in 2000 and 2020. And you can see that they were indeed using some pavement machines. And you can see the image of constructing Pyongyang General Hospital to the right. You can see some concrete vehicles, tower cranes. So all of these modern construction equipment that you can find in South Korea that are also used in North Korea. We know that there is a big disparity between Pyongyang and other cities around other provinces in Korea. So we can see a lot of mixed feeling images here. Now, I would like to talk about how we can develop our presence, South Korea's presence in North Korea's road transportation sector. But before that, I would like to also talk about the countries that are present in North Korea. There's China, Russia, and partly Japan. And what is important is that North Korea is also willing to get foreign investment to promote its infrastructure market. These are some cooperative measures going forward. If you look at the existing cooperation measures, for example, Kaesong Industrial Complex and Kedo and Kumgang Tourism, we did encounter a lot of difficulties and we overcame them. As for Kaesong Industrial Complex, there was a very fierce competition among Korean, South Korean companies. So there was a very dumping of prices. And there was lack of expertise by the north side, and we did also have the right to dismiss the employees, and most of the materials had to be sourced from South Korea because it was not very much available in North Korea, and that eventually increased the actual project cost. And there were also like risk involving like suspension of the project and so forth. So I believe that we have to be ready to rise to these challenges if we were to implement relevant projects in the future. So this is the inter-Korean road transportation infra cost. So 110 trillion Korean won on an accumulated basis. That's the maximum market that we can create. So it can vary from 35 trillion to 110 trillion Korean won. But from the unification perspective, I think we also have to think about how we can save or reduce the required infrastructure costs. And you can see that in North Korea, it is equipped with the road network, electricity grids. All of this should be connected. And we also made some calculations about some different projects. And there is also a project that may require 20 to 30 trillion Korean won. So road is important, and since North Korea really lacks a road network, that should be one of the priority or one of the scenario. And electricity or power network and port network are very poor as well. So roads, power, and ports, all of those should be connected. North Korea also at times faces extreme weather conditions. So that is why we need technology to overcome those challenges. And North Korea is a very maintenance region. So it is very important to have the technology to construct long-span bridges, long-span tunnels, and so forth, taking into consideration the maintenance region. So our institute developed relevant technologies, for example, regarding bridge. And if we apply very advanced technologies, we'll be able to reduce a lot of costs. And if we expand it to Najin and Siniju, we can save up to 350 billion Korean won in costs. So it's something that we really should explore as an opportunity. And I would like to also emphasize the difference that exists between the North and South infrastructure standards. And the terminology that we use is also very different. So we have to also be prepared for that. Now I'd like to wrap up my presentation with how we can cooperate better. We have to explore some funding mechanisms or options. We have to imagine all the possible modernization scenarios of the road transportation in North Korea. And not only that, we need to have a better understanding of the road transportation in North Korea, and we need a cooperation platform to share knowledge. And as mentioned earlier, we also need to consider port systems and the water supply as well as power grid systems. And in 2019, we had a private-led initiative. We actually initiated Inter-Korean Infrastructure Forum. So I think that we should explore opportunities as how we can align our efforts with also this forum's efforts. This is the kind of recommendation I would like to make. Now this is the conclusion of my presentation. We need to develop a mid to long-term roadmap regarding the Inter-Korean road transport infrastructure. A lot of experts are already working on it. We need to have a virtuous cycle, sustainability, and synergy effect. We need to leverage these elements so that we can identify common agenda, exchange technology, and maybe conduct a test bed and joint trial projects and joint overseas development. And in joint overseas development, we can leverage the manpower of North Korea, labor, and the technological expertise of South Korea so that our both countries can indeed become leaders in these fields. Thank you very much. Yes, that was Chairman Ko. Thank you very much for your presentation. So North Korea indeed lacks a lot in terms of road infrastructure. So it presents us with a lot of opportunity to develop South Korea's presence in the road construction sector in North Korea. And Dr. Ko also mentioned that North Korea is very keen on attracting foreign funding or investments in this sector. So if it is possible, then maybe we can, of course, that can present as a crisis for South Korea, limiting its access to North Korean market. And he mentioned about that there is a difference of standards and terminology and the importance of standardizing platform. And North Korea also has some extreme weather conditions, and we need to apply advanced technologies to overcome these challenges. And maybe the two Koreas can also develop a joint project platform together going forward. Thank you. And the third presenter is Chief of Transportation Division, Mr. Baek Seung-gi from Korea Expressway Corporation Research Institute. He's going to talk about the role and effectiveness of the road network development on the Korean Peninsula. I will be focusing on road today. There are lots of perspectives regarding the road market in North Korea. Some consider it as a risk, some consider it as an opportunity. But I think that people who are researching infrastructure are more optimistic. And I believe that these perspectives may vary according to the international dynamics and politics, and yet we continue to seek alternative solutions. As it is said, we consider working with North Korea as an opportunity, and it is in that regard I chose this title for my presentation. These are the contents of my presentation. We will have a look at the arterial highway network of North Korea. And I'm going to also share with you the benefits of that initiative. And that initiative requires a lot of considerations. Let's have a look at that. I will also present some cooperative measures between the two Koreas. Arterial roads or highways played a very important role in South Korea as well for economic development and for the living environment. So arterial roads played a pivotal role in the economic development of Korea, and it really helped Koreans to reach anywhere in Korea in one day. So arterial roads should be able to play this kind of role in North Korea as well, as these roads were beneficial for Korea. So in order for that to happen, we need cooperation from relevant agencies and institutions, and that will be the focus of my presentation. There are lots of things to compare between the two countries. Drastic contrast in terms of roads and many other things. But as our speaker said, for the past 70 years, it was very much train or railway oriented. But from the mid-1990s, for the past 30 years, North Korea drastically shifted to a market economy, and that resulted in North Korea becoming more road-oriented. So compared to the colonial period in 1930s, you can see that the roads or the railways have been very, very slow in terms of speed, even compared to those days. And that is why logistics is very important. And to complement that, North Korea is focusing on road network. And if you look at the current transportation situation in North Korea, government is pursuing railroad projects, and the private sector is, or the population is really wanting more roads. So of course, there is a tug of war between the two parties, but that is also becoming an obstacle in expanding the road network in North Korea. Of course, there are highways or expressways in North Korea, but qualitatively and quantitatively speaking, they lag far behind compared to those of South Korea, and their functions need to be further developed and improved. So these are some of the road transportation policy of North Korea by period. So during the Kim Il-sung era, there was the establishment of railway authority, and during the Kim Jong-il era, there was the development of marketplaces, which facilitated the development of logistics. And during the Kim Jong-un era, it is seeking a qualitative growth of the road network, but it hasn't been realized yet. So if North ends up building its road network, what kind of benefits would it bring to North Korea and also to the Korean Peninsula? So Northeast Asia is the hub, one of the hub of the global logistics. So it will be a chance for the Korean Peninsula to improve our transportation and logistics competitiveness. And there are lots of integrated projects that are underway. For the past 20 years, these projects have been implemented, and a lot of integration efforts are being made. So in Asia, I'm talking about Asian Highway AH, and there's also BRI, Belt Road Initiative, led by China. So if an arterial road network is developed across Korean Peninsula, I think that North Korea would be able to play a more important role in all of these initiatives I mentioned. So for the past 50 years, South Korea saw a lot of benefits in reduced travel time thanks to the arterial road. If that becomes possible in North Korea, I believe that it will also reduce their travel time and make North Koreans reach anywhere in North Korea within one day. As I said, it is very important to improve the road networks so that North Korea can accelerate its economic development and implement its economic development plans. So in 1970s, there were only 130,000 registered cars in Korea. In 2014, it reached 20 million. And during the communist era, and after the fall of the communist era, the number of cars registered in those countries drastically increased as well. And I believe that if North Korea opens up its economy, the number of registered vehicles will drastically increase as well, driving up the demand for transportation and logistics. Now you can see that on the left it is South Korea, and there is a conurbation of housing districts. So there is the first phase, a new town development, second phase, and so forth. The same goes in North Korea. So there is a regional development that is taking place, and it is also trying to develop like megacities. And let's look at the tourism sector. So most of the travel in tourism takes place by car in Korea. So the transport modal share for tourism travel is mostly car. And in North Korea, when it opens its tourism market, I think that it will be able to see an increase travel of cars as well, thus improve a road network. So the road transport network in North Korea helped to create jobs as well, about 1.5 million. And in North Korea, I think that road transport sector, once improved, will also improve job employment, hiring about 1.3 million people. Now let's look at the strategy for developing a road network on the Korean Peninsula. So when we talk about this road network, it will be important for the Korean Peninsula, but it should also serve as an international road network that connects the peninsula with Northeast Asia as well as a whole, and also beyond the world. Quality is also important. So what should be the level of quality to ensure? We can define a target service level, or we can apply the socioeconomic indicators. So all of these developments do have an impact on the economic development, so very important to consider. So that was the quantity side, but we also have to look at the quality side. The quality should be on par with South Korea, or it should not be as sophisticated as South Korea. So we have to look at different categories of low cost, mid cost, and high cost, and make comparison and analysis. So the transportation infrastructure development should be massively carried out at the early stage. So the case in point is East Germany.
훨씬 더 비용을 줄이는
Because if we make massive investments in the beginning phase, then we can eventually reduce a lot of costs in terms of when the unification actually comes.
중요하다는 것은 어떤
And of course, the transportation network should promote both the public value and commercial viability and commercial effectiveness. And it is depending all of these factors that we have to consider what kind of funding options that we should choose.
여러분이 언급하지만 그 재원 조달도 굉장히 중요합니다. 많은 재원이
As many of our speakers said, funding measures are important. There are different sources of funding. There could be a funding coming from South Korea, international funding, and private sourced funding. So it is very important to seek a balanced sources of funding so that we can maximize synergy effects. And we need relevant strategies. And North Korea should also become involved in exploring different funding measures. Technologically speaking, we have lots to consider. As said, there are differences in inter-Korean standards in construction sector, but also in the road sector as well. There are identical aspects, but also different aspects. So as for all of these differences, they can have an impact on efficiency. So both Koreas need to work together to bridge that gap. There are many different cooperative measures. I would like to summarize it into three. First is the inter-Korean cooperation. Lots has been said, but not much output. There are different types of cooperation out there, but we've never considered North Korea as an international partner. So in that sense, we have to think that we are engaging in an international cooperation when cooperating with North Korea. So this mindset is very important, and this mindset can serve as the basis for other types of cooperation, but we fail to achieve that. We also need to overcome the challenges where our cooperation is very much limited to certain sectors or certain areas. And since North Korea is not a very stable country, we have to work together to minimize the relevant risks. And these are some of the things that we need to consider as priority. There could be domestic cooperation, also inter-Korean cooperation. First of all, we need to build trust. We need to collaborate on technology matters. There are also a lot of modernization or projects in North Korea modernizing its road projects. And I believe that South Korea has a lot to offer so that these kind of initiatives can develop into more cooperation opportunities. So you can see that these are some of the cooperation proposals by area. So you can see that a lot of these proposals are very much limited and they are considered as domestic projects, but we have to take the perspective that working with North Korea could also be an international or global cooperation project. So this is the summary of what we should consider when cooperating with North Korea. Things to be considered by South and also by North as well.
여러 가지 협력들이 필요한데요. 분야별 추진하는 것들이 한계라든지
So there are, for example, limited cooperation in limited sectors, and
많은 사항들의 협력이 필요합니다.
we need cooperation in many different areas. And these corporations need to bear fruit so that we can develop infrastructure in North Korea.
정세들을 오히려
And it can also help to tackle the soaring inter-Korean relations. Currently, the conditions are not very much favorable, but I think that we should get together to take into consideration all of these matters. Thank you very much. Mr. Beck, for your presentation. So when we're developing inter-Korean road networks, he mentioned about the benefits that we can gain and also the strategies that should be prepared in advance. He also mentioned about the need to develop a cooperative mechanism between the two Koreas when building road infrastructure. Of course, cooperation is important, but if we cannot cooperate right now, then we should not stay on our laurels. We should work within South Korea and make preparations in advance, is what Mr. Bex highlighted. So with that, we have listened to all the three presentations. We were not given much time, but we were able to listen to very interesting topics as well as directions for way forward. Now, I would like to turn it over to our four panelists. Please keep your 5 minutes. Thank you. The first panelist is Kwak Hyun-jun, Managing Director of Korea Expressway Corporation.
Hello, as introduced, my name is Kwak Hyun-jun. It is an honor for me to be part of the KGFP and to discuss ways to establish land infrastructure in North Korea. The South Korean government presented the audacious initiative in August, and that includes projects to modernize ports and airports for international trade, as well as assistance for power generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure. The railway cooperation has been agreed by both Koreas during the last administrations, and I can see that through the audacious initiative that the current administration will respect the existing agreement between the two Koreas. So we have enough groundwork to pursue renovation and maintenance of the Kaesong-Pyeongyang Highway. And given the fact that North Korea's road length or road span is only a quarter of that of South Korea, and its pavement rate is only 26%, North Korea's road modernization is in dire need. But if we look at the economic development process of socialist nations like China and Vietnam, the automobile penetration rate has experienced a significant growth. And short to mid-distance logistics movement were served through the laying of roads. And there is the new Tuman River Bridge and new Amrok River Bridge that were built in the border areas of China and North Korea. And depending on how the relations between not only those two countries but also concerning South Korea, we will be able to improve the logistics across the area as well as exchanges. Now, let's take a look at our history of exchange between the two Koreas. Under the premise that South Korea well understands the unique characteristics or situations in North Korea, we have always claimed that we ought to pursue projects that are largely supplier-oriented when it comes to North Korea's road and railway infrastructure. But we need to think about this from a different perspective. We will have to think about, once again, what North Korea really needs and concentrate our investment in that area. Many experts say that instead of building new roads or expanding the existing railways, the existing systems and infrastructure need maintenance. And we also, of course, need to lay new roads. So railway and road cannot be two separate issues, but they must go together. And the road, with its accessibility and mobility, has the advantage of being able to connect major areas in North Korea with the shortest distance. If we can develop a road and railway in an efficient manner, it will serve as a priming water for many other developments like electricity and gas pipeline, energy supply system, water supply and drainage system, and so on. And for the harbor volume transportation, the construction of back roads is essential. And we can easily secure sites for road building in case of North Korea. So we will be able to establish necessary electric power structure or optical communication cable or gas and drainage system. And at the same time, establish railway and transfer system that would connect to major ports and airports. And that would be the most effective system for North Korea, I believe. North Korea is also very much interested in the fourth industrial revolution and related technologies. Many advanced countries are now going from internal combustion engines to EVs, and North Korea is interested in following that path. CITS or autonomous driving and other technologies must be included in our cooperation projects regarding road and railway. Yuval Harari in his book Homo Sapiens say that the only country in the world where autonomous driving can be made possible is North Korea. What he means is that as long as Kim Jong-un can be persuaded without any kind of conflict, these advanced technologies can be commercialized in North Korea. Taking that into consideration, going forward, when establishing railways and roadways in North Korea, we would need two things. First, we would have to establish a headquarters with regards to related ministries. Not only related ministries, but public corporations and private experts can take part in this transportation cooperation platform to exchange information and engage in communication to come up with effective measures to realize these measures. And if necessary, many related agencies can perhaps carry out joint research projects. And in the Inter-Korean Joint Economic Development Committee, which we see will be established going forward, we would have to see the participation of experts from public and private sectors who will come up with standard models for development that can be applied to economic special zones and cities. And if these projects or models can be implemented, they will serve as a model for future joint economic development projects. But when we do not make these necessary preparations, we will not be able to actually come up with logic to persuade North Korea when the era of unification actually comes. So today we are facing the right time to pursue transportation cooperation with North Korea. This is the timely moment. Thank you so much for your comment. You said that we have to establish many other infrastructure related to railway and roads, including energy supply system and a gas and electricity system. And you said that in order to modernize ports and airports for international trade for North Korea, we would have to modernize North Korea's road system as well. You also talked about the adoption of advanced technologies. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Lee Baek-jin from Korea Research Institute for Human Settlements. Hello, everyone. Thank you and congratulations on holding today's important forum. And I would like to thank the Korea Express Corporation for hosting today's session. It's been 2008 that I've been involved with projects in North Korea. So after my return to South Korea, I worked on the Asian Highway Transportation Demand Research Project. So I thought that, after 10 years of the research, we will see some substantial outcome. But, in 2018, with the Pyongyang summit, and there were also working level discussions, and we also paid an on-site visit to North Korea, and we saw also 4 rounds of working level discussions. But unfortunately, all of these efforts ended up in vain. They were not very much realized. But as it was mentioned by our previous speakers, I think that we gained also quite a lot along the way. One of the concerns that we have is the US-China conflict and also Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Regarding infrastructure and the infrastructure projects, we considered Russia and China as important project partners. We thought that we could get help from Russia and China to promote infrastructure projects in North Korea. And while doing some research, we were able to also meet up with a lot of experts in Russia and China to share ideas. Unfortunately, for the past 1 to 2 years, because of COVID-19, we could not advance our efforts. But with the ease of COVID-19 going forward, we can resume our efforts. Of course, the international dynamics and the conditions are not very much favorable, as mentioned by our previous speakers. We need more silent cooperation among academics, among scholars, among the private sectors. And we will also work hard to collaborate more with the Chinese and the Russian scholars. And we would need more assistance to that end. One of the most important things is during the Liberation Day speech, President Yoon mentioned about the audacious initiative, and the Ministry of Unification has presented the plan for inter-Korean joint development. So when it comes to infrastructure and the infrastructure sector, we are also very keen on developing master plans or blueprints to implement that initiative. So in the master plan, we believe that there are some essential points that need to be included. First of all, during the working level inter-Korean meetings, and whenever we met North Korean working level officials, there were some problems. Like, we agreed to do co-design and co-construction, but what does that really mean? So these are some of the practical issues that need to be addressed. So we need to develop a practical master plan, and this master plan should definitely reflect and incorporate the experiences that we had during the working level meeting. And the second thing is, before COVID-19, North Korea very much preferred a private-led investment projects. And North Korea sent a lot of scholars outside to have them educated and trained abroad. So around the world, there are very few countries like South Korea, which have very advanced private and public or PPP projects. So I think that we should further promote PPP efforts. And when it comes to railway and road, we make a lot of relevant plans. We have made a lot of relevant plans. And whenever we talk with the North Korean people, we have to clearly know what kind of road developments and railway developments that they need to further accelerate their economic development. And what we thought as they would need and what they thought as what they would need were sometimes different. So we really have to bridge that gap. I think that I'm already over 5 minutes. I had a lot to share, but I would like to wrap up my comments here. So thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for your comments. You also mentioned about what needs to be included in the master plan. You said we have to incorporate our past experiences at working level discussions and also accommodate the real needs of North Korea.
Next, we will hear from Mr. Jung Sang-ju, Research Fellow and Team Manager at the Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology. Very nice to meet you. So I enjoyed the 3 presentations as well as the comments from the discussants. So they really contained key messages, and I agree with them. I would like to talk about something different, alternatives perhaps at a time when the direct inter-Korean cooperation is difficult. Yes, indeed, the circumstances are not favorable for inter-Korean cooperation when compared to other countries. About 20 member states of the European Union have diplomatic relations with North Korea. They have many cases of exchange and investment, and trade with China actually takes up 95% of North Korea's total trade volume. And we expect the Japanese companies and the United States companies to make significant assistance and investment to North Korea once sanctions are lifted. But as for Korea, yes, we have continued with inter-Korean cooperation projects, but the scopes was limited. And therefore, we would have to consider our international competitors when North Korea does open up in earnest. For socialist nations to open and develop its infrastructure, global aid and FDI were essential. So as for China, when it opened up and reformed in 1978, with joining of the WTO in 2001, the foreign direct investment surged. That the total amount of foreign direct investment as of 2018 was 4 quadrillion won, and the size of private-public partnership was 196 trillion won. As for Vietnam, after its opening and reform in 1986, with a partial lift of sanctions by the United States, the ODA increased. So up until 2017, about 66 trillion won ODA funding went into Vietnam, and 28% were invested into establishing transportation and communication infrastructure. Now, going forward, we need to really rethink our strategy and think in the viewpoint of overseas players. We have 60 years of history in terms of overseas construction industry, and we have achieved significant accomplishments in terms of quantity, but we still fall behind that of other advanced countries when it comes to our engineering share or operating profit ratio. So, as Mr. Seo Jung-won said, this is similar to what Mr. Seo Jung-won said. So, by cooperating with other countries whose conditions are similar to that of North Korea, we would create some business models so that when actual cooperation with North Korea becomes possible, we will be able to apply that model. And the fact that we do not have a language barrier will serve as an advantage. And our analysis of our construction history and the record of that construction history would be very meaningful. So if we can just organize the records of our construction accomplishments or our past track records, then that would be very meaningful. If we can make them into a form of catalog with a delivery of information, or if we can provide samples, consumers usually are easily satisfied and make their decision to purchase the item. You know that when we buy cars, we drive them. When we buy houses, we go to model houses to see them. Now, but when it comes to large infrastructure, there would be many elements to consider, like politics, business, technology, finance, institutions, safety, culture, management, operation, and so on. So it would be very difficult to make a comprehensive judgment, and therefore we need to come up with ways for the users of that infrastructure to easily understand and visualize and experience the infrastructure. And
과거로부터의 성장 단계별 의미와 경제 성장,
our infrastructure model is excellent because we have accumulated both quantitative and quantitative track records in a very short period of time. So I believe that our track record of construction will become very appealing to the users. And if we can come up with something like a road work manual or a road development history booklet that actually connects to other elements like the city and its population and economic growth rate and so on, and if we can make clear the correlationship between those elements and the construction track record that we have, then North Korea will be able to use that in a very effective manner. So they say that when it comes to if our past cases can be the future for North Korea, and so if we can organize our track record and present them in a visual catalog of some sort, that would be very helpful for us to pursue cooperation going forward. And I would like to see the cooperation of many experts so that our road infrastructure cooperation can be done in connection to larger economic projects that we want to carry out going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chong Sang-jun, for your remarks. You said that design, engineering, not just construction, should be considered when we make preparations for inter-Korean cooperation. And as for our cooperation model, because we have done many construction projects overseas, we can definitely refer to them when working with North Korea in the future.
Last panelist is Lee Sung-woo, Chief of Regional Cooperation Committee of Korea Maritime Institute. Hello everyone, I'm the last panelist, Lee Sung-woo. So the last person is always pressed with time, but I am going to share with you everything that I prepared for today. So I realized that we have a lot of perspectives, very different perspectives also vis-a-vis North Korea. We're joined by many experts and also scholars here, and I am from the infrastructure sector. I think that we have to have a broader vision, a broader perspective. I'm sure that you saw in the news that yesterday, ASEAN Institute and Land Research published a report. So North Korea is probably trying to develop further its cyber and nuclear capability to disturb South Korea. And how should South Korea respond was one of the questions asked. And actually, one of the speakers said that we have to put K-pop files in USB and send it to North Korea. So what does that mean? What is the gist of that message? This is to say that what North Korea fears the most is toppling of its regime. You say that North Korea is very much interested in promoting economic development. Yes, that is true, but they are also very keen on ensuring its regime stability as well. So why did North Korea's economy remain the same? Because they always ask for security assurance. So it is from that perspective that we have to initiate infrastructure projects with the North. So regarding the transportation sector, I believe that the inter-Korean cooperation can be very much limited, and that is why we have to focus more on the logistics sector. And as Dr. Seo said, we also have to look at the nuclear program of North Korea. So in 2015, with the Ministry of Unification, I visited North Korea twice or three times because of Najin Hassan actually project. And North Korea wanted to actually have some stakes of equity in the investment project, but they talked a lot about also the road behind the port. And there is the three principles that they present. First is they want to have access to the international logistics, and they want to make that region port as an international logistics hub and also the tourism hub. And that was the three major principles of the Nasan Special Zone. And of course, there is the talk of port and also railway, but not very much of road network. Because if we were to have this road project, this is not to develop or extend roads to North Korea. This is actually to develop road in Nasan Special Zone and also to develop road networks between Nasan, Najin and Hasan. And for economic development, it was the same for South Korea and China, and for Vietnam, the principle was the same, meaning that we develop economy surrounding the port, and then we add the railway road networks, and then seek the nationwide development. I think that North Korea will go down the same road, but what is important here is that they are joining the dots, and this is the type of approach that they will take going forward. A dot can be a port, that can be a city, but what's connecting all of these dots can be a road network. Of course, railway can be a solution, but railway is for a mid-range. So it is in that sense, I think that there will be a room for cooperation in the road infrastructure between the two Koreas. So inside the economic special zone, we have to develop road infrastructures in North Korea. That could be the essential point. And we also have to be able to connect the border areas as well and the border cities as well. That should be focused on road, but also a port, connecting port with roads. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to take a package-based approach, and we can develop infrastructure projects based on these packages so that they can be accepted by North Korea. And as Professor or Dr. Peck said, yes, it's an important topic. It requires selection and focus. But there is a lot of gap between our countries. Actually, they are like foreigners, but with the same language, is what we should say. So that is why we have to identify, the gaps in advance and work on standardization, and the corporation should first start in that regard. So these are some of the small steps that we can take primarily. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we don't have much time left, so I would like to turn it over to the floor for questions or comments. Maybe we can entertain 2 questions. Please raise your hand. We will hand you over the microphone.
Anyone have any questions from the floor? Looks like we don't have any questions from our online viewers as well. Okay, I think there are no questions. If you don't have any questions, perhaps we could hear some concluding remark from each one of our presenters. A minute each from all of you. Mr. Seo Jung-won, can you go first? So thank you so much for the wonderful presentations and comments. I don't think I have anything to add. As said by other participants, the transportation cooperation with North Korea, when continuing that, the key is to cooperate in road transport, port and airport and so on. We would have to take preemptive measures and be prepared beforehand so that we will be able to pursue effective cooperation from North Korea going forward. Given the current circumstances, we have to form a consensus as to what kind of consultative body that we're going to establish and how we're going to fund the projects. As the Korean administration changes, the policies always change radically. But China, Russia, North Korea, and Japan, for a very long period of time, have establish their policies based on a single framework or under a big picture, but that has not been the case for Korea, and that has served as an obstacle to pursuing an effective inter-Korean cooperation. So I hope that improvements will be made in that area. Thank you very much, Mr. Ko Kyung-tae.
So to sum up all of these different ideas, when we were developing arterial roads in Korea, we thought a lot about how to connect the dot between different infrastructures that were available in Korea, South Korea. And I think that a lot of the platforms were also presented and proposed at the time. So if we can have some buy-in from the people from the Ministry of Unification, I think that we'd be able to come up with better solutions. So Mr. Beck, there are varying perspectives between the two Koreas. We are currently talking about joint growth and joint development, but as one of our speakers said, North Korea considers these types of projects as a risk. They could consider these projects as a risk because it could undermine their regime stability. And there are also people who consider North Korea as a risk, and that is why we need to do a risk management in advance before undertaking infrastructure projects. This is the argument of some people, but I believe that is not always the case. So, of course, risk management is important, but we can do risk management and infrastructure development in parallel at the same time. So, in that sense, I think that all of us need to work together. Thank you very much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to wrap up all the presentations and panel discussions for our session today. Although time was short, we were able to cover different topics, the role and the expected benefits of the inter-Korean logistics network, or the road network, and the relevant technologies that are required. I found the session to be very meaningful, and I believe that these discussions will provide the input for the development of relevant plans by the Korean government, and of course, finalizing the inter-Korean logistics infrastructure and their benefits can go beyond the Korean Peninsula to all over the world. These are some of the expectations that we hold. But as you may well know, the international politics and inter-Korean relations are faced with unfavorable situation, and yet we have to never stop making these efforts. Even though we cannot have a direct buy-in from North Korea, there are lots of things that can be prepared within South Korea. If we make continued preparations, eventually we will be able to see a very promising and rosy future. So we look forward to your continued support for the inter-Korean land transportation infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, and our distinguished guests, the panelists, presenters, thank you very much for your participation. With that, we would like to wrap up session 5-1. From 3:10, we are going to have a keynote session. We look forward to your participation.